And so take it away, Michelle.
All right. Hello, everybody. I want to make sure you see Sherry's on the call here too. Hi, Sherry.
Hello, everyone. If we haven't met, my name is Sherry Boyd. I am VR's Workforce and Youth Manager. Great to be joining today.
Yes. All right. So we have, we wanted to start off with VR announcements today. We have 2 announcements to give everybody. The first is that VR has made a decision about a pre-ETS portal. So this is good news. This is what will replace our YTP pre-ETS database. It is a product that is made by Alliance, who owns Orca, which is VR's client information system already. So for a lot of reasons, it made sense. It will look and feel really familiar. The contracting will be simplified compared to buying something that we don't have a contract with already. And it isn't something we have to build. So we are starting with some sort of standard off-the-shelf features, and we're going to be able to customize some things over time. And we're going to implement this in phases. And our first phase, we're looking to launch in fall. Is probably realistic, right? By the time we get everything purchased and we get our own internal teams trained, then we're going to be looking to launch it in fall, most likely. In the meantime, I'm sitting here with all of our wonderful University of Oregon folks, and we're talking about a plan for wrapping up current database stuff, how you can maintain access to your students, where we'll keep track of things in the meantime, and so that you feel ready as we make this transition as ready as possible. The portal and data tracking in general are really important. VR has been part of quarterly data reviews since our monitoring, and RSA just released a new dashboard. So we're going over our data really regularly. And it's still true that all of the wonderful work that we know and we have recorded isn't ending up in the hands of our federal partners. And so it's just critical that we prioritize this and that we work with a company that we kind of have a relationship with already, so that we can work through the kinks and get everything reported accurately, so that we know we can count for all the good work that everybody's doing. So that's the first big announcement. We have a portal. None of us have played with it yet. We just made the purchase decision. Now we're working on the contracting. Things will happen as fastly as they can, and we'll keep you posted with that. I don't know if we really have time for questions, but I have asked our lovely, wonderful TAPs to start collecting questions from you guys that you might have, so that we can try to address the questions that you have as we all prepare for this huge shift coming up. So that's announcement number 1. Announcement number 2 is that VR has it's become very apparent that the amount of work that this shift will take is something that warrants having a manager position assigned to it. So in the new positions that we're creating in VR, there will be a manager and there will be 4 program analysts, which is the same level that I am. So there's going to be 5 positions. And I think the manager position is going to post sooner rather than later is kind of the words that I'm hearing. And the intention is to fill that first, and then post to the other positions, so that the manager has some say and just direction in hiring that team. So I don't know if you guys have questions about that as well. Happy to take some if we have time, but how are we on time? We have about 3 minutes, right?
My bad, first me.
Yeah.
We could probably say that you have 5.
5 minutes?
Crazy.
Okay, if there's any
Only 10
questions,
to 15.
Sherry and I are here if there are any questions that we can answer about any of that. And if not, then we will welcome our wonderful guests.
if I could just add, because this might spark some interest or future conversation, you might have heard us announce when we had the YTP regionals about our need to go through the legislative process in order to get this position authority, right? We've known that the University of Oregon contract is no longer, but the work is still essential. So why haven't we hired for these positions yet? So I do want to give an update that the governor has released the governor's recommended budget. In that governor's recommended budget, these 5 positions do exist. So that is kind of encouraged in our launching of being able to get closer to recruitment. Obviously, the legislative process is the one that decides if approval of that recommended governor's budget happens. We are not asking for an increase in budget. We are asking for a authority of a position because the cost that we have included in the University of Oregon makes this ask cost neutral. So that's where there's been a lot of just added additional resource support to this ask. So if you have been following that governor's recommended budget and the legislative process as it has begun, we are included. So you'll see those 5 positions. And again, really excited that we are dedicating resource to a committed manager, as I am all things workforce and youth. This is very passionate and dear to my heart. So I am looking forward to walking alongside and supporting the new manager in this role, who will be completely dedicated to all of this incredible work and be able to be an additional partner to support what you're all doing.
Thank you, Sherry. Gail Newton asked in the chat, will the PA positions only work with transition age youth or older adults as well? All of these new positions are youth focused. Any other questions?
I had a quick question. This is Edwin from Three Rivers.
Great.
So you mentioned that the pre-eds aren't being reported to the federal government. So how can, as a YTP specialist, how can we be more proactive in like highlighting those success stories, or like, you know, just showing them, hey, you know, we need to be here. This is, you know, we're doing good.
Oh yeah, no, there is nothing else you can do. We have amazing documentation and we tell that story and people are really astounded and heartfelt. And, you know, just they appreciate everything we're doing. This is a glitch in our system. This is a glitch in our VR reporting system that is very technical. We got to get like programmers and people that speak a whole different language involved to fix it. And we're working on that. But there isn't anything else that you guys can do that we can do really, other than just go, you know, keep bugging people. And we have to invest in a product that will help us capture everything. The other thing you can do is when we roll all of this out, everybody, change is hard for all of us. It's going to be clunky. Keep patience. Remember why we do this. Be open about what your needs are. Okay.
I have a question, Michelle. So for now, they just keep working with kids, keep entering data just like they currently are.
Yep.
Just keep doing everything.
Or now, keep doing everything that you've been doing. Keep working with students. Keep your databases up to date. We still use it. We still need it. We still have it. We still own it. We still report it. Hopefully it will show up correctly as we do the fixes in the background, but we have to have data to work with to attempt to make those fixes.
All right. Anything
Yeah.
else? You ready?
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. And yes, we're all very grateful, and we know how much wonderful work you're doing with your students. So I just want to introduce our speakers today. We have Judy Trask, and all right, from Malheur County Prevention. She's a Malheur County Prevention Coordinator. In Malheur County, she's certified prevention specialist. She's been a mental health first aid instructor since 2014 and a master assist trainer. And then we have Paula, and she worked in early childhood education, childcare for 24 years before becoming a certified prevention specialist. She has a mental health first aid instructor. She's been a mental health first aid instructor since 2007 and a master assist trainer. They're going to talk to you today and hopefully provide you with good resources and ideas on how to better serve your students. Okay, being here.
Awesome. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
We're going to do a disclaimer really quickly. So we're Malheur County. For those of you in the other part of Oregon that don't know, we're like right on the border. People, when we're on our Oregon meetings, they're like, so where are you? So we're almost Idaho. That's where we are. And our topic today is youth mental health and suicide prevention. And again, Paula and I are both mental health first aid trainers, CIS trainers, QPR trainers. We do TMAC, if any of you are familiar with that. I am a certified alcohol and drug counselor, not currently working in that position. But each of these topics that we're going to talk on today, or each of these slides that we're going to talk on today, we could do a whole day training on. So we're going to probably just give some real basics and then open it up for questions if that works for everybody. We're not, it's just very basic. And I think sometimes when we're putting this together, it's like we've got so much information. What do we focus on, and what do we, what's going to impact the population that you're working with the most? And so we do a lot of work in the schools. And we do a lot of work in the community with agencies, with ODHS. So we do trainings, we take in curriculums. And so we're kind of trying to focus this a little bit toward educators.
So one of the things that we find, we're going to give you very brief information on all of these slides that we have here, and then we'll just open it up for questions that you have for us. We know that the stigma that surrounds mental health issues of all kinds, which includes suicide and substance use, has gotten better over the years. However, we've got a long ways to go, and there is still that stigma that does exist. We also have to recognize that there's culture that plays into stigma sometimes, just because of different cultural beliefs, right? And I don't just mean cultures as in countries of origin. I mean cultures as in specific religious cultures or family cultures, or community cultures. And so there's a lot of things that play into that role. What we do know is that stigma can lead to discrimination, and that discrimination can make it very difficult for people to be willing and able to reach out for the help that they need.
So this next slide, when we saw this slide, or when we heard this phrase, and it's been, I don't know, maybe a couple of years, we took so many trainings, online trainings and such during COVID that we can't remember which we took when. But when children aren't heard, their behaviors do the talking. And so there's a few things that we want to speak to on this. We know that the behaviors that are seen in the classrooms can be frustrating. In all honesty, we go into a lot of classrooms, and last year, when we started back into classrooms after the pandemic, it was awful. And it's better this year, but we're still seeing behaviors that we likely did not see before the pandemic. But the behaviors are trying to tell us something, and it's really difficult with a classroom full of students to deal with one behavior. It's almost easier to send that person to the counselor or to the principal or whoever and not deal with it, because you've got 29 or 30 other kids sitting in there that you need to address. The problem with that is those behaviors, they will continue and they will exacerbate, and it doesn't give our kids a chance to build some resilience. And so along those lines, when we address the behavior and provide some resources or provide some skills to address the behavior, and the child goes back into the classroom and that behavior gets a little bit better, but the other behaviors are not so good, and we still send the child out, rather than address it, rather than say, hey, you're doing really good in this point, in right here in this little area, and remember the skill you learned to address this is whether it be breathing or whatever the case may be, and you're doing really well with that, let's do a skill to address this breathing and give them a chance to build the resiliency. The resiliency part of it takes a long time, and these young people are coming from some very difficult backgrounds, as you all know. Let me see, I'm just, yeah, looking for the positive and reinforcing it and building on those small changes. We were in one of the schools here locally a couple weeks ago, and we had a counselor tell us that she gets a little, not frustrated, but she just doesn't know what to do about this, because she'll work with a child on the behavior, send them back into the classroom, and the other behaviors that are going along with the one behavior she worked on are still happening. So they don't give it, so they're not given the chance to change the first behavior. And so again, we know that's hard. We've been in classrooms not
Well, over the last month, we've been in several, especially
several.
sixth grade and third grade classrooms.
Yeah.
At various schools. And even now we can see the effects that COVID had. Those third graders that we're having this year are the ones that missed the first year of kindergarten. And so it's definitely made an impact on those. And I can see as well that impact is affecting the educators, you know, the classroom teachers and the IAs in those classrooms, because they're not having the same group of third graders that they had prior to the pandemic, because they've missed out on those social and emotional learning opportunities in kindergarten and first grade.
And I think we are such strong supporters of educators. We laud teachers and administrators, and we know how difficult it is. And sometimes it sounds like, well, pay more attention to that child. I've been in a classroom. One time I remember being in a classroom of third graders, and literally there were 5 administrators in there trying to address the behaviors of one child. And I just went on teaching the curriculum to the other 25 or whatever is in the class. So we know how difficult it is. But I think if we look at this and always frame it when we're seeing these behaviors as not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you, and that's a more trauma-informed approach, knowing that a lot of the behaviors stem from what is going on or what has gone on in their lives, in their homes, trauma, whatever, whatever is happening to them currently. And I think that's always helped us a little bit when we're dealing with a child that's a problem in the class. It's like, okay, what happened to you, not what's wrong with you. And then using those SEL tools to help build that resilience.
So if we take a look at the median age of onset for several different types of mental health diagnoses, the median age of onset for anxiety disorders is 6 years old. For behavior disorders, things such as ADHD, it's 11 years old. For mood disorders, things such as depression, it's 13 years old. And for substance use disorders, it's 15 years old. So we're looking at literally half the population with these diagnoses has been diagnosed before that age, and the other half after that age. Those are very, very young ages, and we have seen over the years how those ages have gone down and down and down for almost every single diagnosis. Half of all types of mental health disorders are diagnosed before the age of 14, with 3/4 being diagnosed by the age of 25. So those statistics are pretty scary, right? And it's often asked, is that because there's more occurrence of these disorders, or is that because we're just recognizing it more? That's really hard to say. It's probably some of both, actually. And also that people are, the stigma has gotten better. And so people are not as afraid to seek the help that they need. So it's maybe talked about a little bit more openly than it was 20 years ago.
The problem also, though, with that is we know that our young people they definitely don't want to be different. And so even though we have worked really hard on destigmatizing mental health issues and suicide, talking about suicide prevention, intervention, postvention, we still you know, we still have our young people that are they just don't want to be different. And so a lot of times they will not, again, their behaviors will do the talking, or the other thing that sometimes happens or often happens is that they talk to a peer. And so it is our belief, especially with suicide prevention, that our young people should be QPR trained.
Mhm.
We've done some QPR trainings for youth, and we do plan on doing, that is our focus for our implementation plan for mental health prevention and promotion in Malheur County next year, is to try to train more youth in QPR, which is that suicide prevention piece.
Paula,
Yes.
can you tell us what QPR stands for?
Yeah, QPR is a suicide prevention framework that's question, persuade, and refer. It can be done in an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on how much you want to add to it. But it is really important. And we know going into classrooms that these young people, especially middle school and high school, they are facing these issues. They are facing things to do with mental health. They're facing things to do with suicide. And so we feel like it's important to not pretend it doesn't exist there. I know we've come across some people in all different walks. I know I won't even put them under a label or category, but all different walks of life and professions that say, well, if we don't address that, then we don't have a problem, or we don't want to put that idea in someone's head. The fact is that our kids have, you know, pretty much the world in their back pocket because of the internet and phones and all of that. And so they are exposed to it. They're absolutely exposed to it. So in my opinion, it's better to have them have factual information rather than whatever someone's posting on social media.
And QPR is just takes an hour to an hour and a half to teach the class. And it's just, if a peer, it's early suicide intervention skills to know what to do if somebody starts talking to you about the feelings that they're having or being suicidal. And again, we know that a lot of young people will go to their peers before they'll go to an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can get, and we are going to leave you with what we feel like is a really good resource or tool for our young people. But if we can get our young people trained in this, then again, that's going to take away more of that stigma. And
Mm-hmm.
when we have taught young people this particular course, they really grasp onto that. They really are interested in that. So
Absolutely. They want the information, and they want to know that there is something they can do when their friend talks to them, because more likely than not, it is a matter of when, not if, that they're going to be hearing about these things or knowing someone who is directly affected by mental illness or by suicide or by both.
okay, so when we start looking at what the #1 risk factor for mental health disorders is, or mental health challenges, it's trauma. And again, we lately, when we've been talking about trauma, we preface this with saying we've all experienced a level of trauma. Everybody went through a pandemic. That's nothing that anybody in the United States has ever, or the world, well, not for a long time, not in our generations, and there's several of them, have ever experienced. And so some people experience that level of trauma because trauma is very individual on a different basis than other people. And so when we look in a classroom, you know, there were so many things, if we think about what played into the trauma of the pandemic, that we could be a whole nation of people that are traumatized to a certain degree. It just from that, I don't mean to minimize it because it's a terrible, horrible thing, but from the pandemic. And so we have our children, which you're dealing with, in our youth that have gone through this pandemic, that haven't developed their social skills along a normal continuum anyway, that they would learn how to problem solve, learn how to create relationships, and then have the trauma of the pandemic going back to school. And then if they have any kind of trauma in their family or their history or their background, Or what we found in Malheur County that happened is a lot of these young people, because we are the lowest income county in Oregon, and the largest county, but lowest income, is that a lot of these kids went for however long they were out of school and without any parent guidance, really didn't have any, were just left home to take care of siblings, to, you know, they didn't, besides not getting the learning, they had some trauma related to being home, you know, or in domestic relationships or whatever the case may be. These young people weren't in school to have teachers' eyes on them, that would be reported like to ODHS for child abuse and such. And so we really need to take a look at trauma and how that impacts each of the people that we are working with, or how it may, what might have happened, again, what happened to them, and understanding that that is the #1 risk factor for mental health disorders, for suicidal ideations, for, and now we got a lot of it. So let's just add a little bit more onto your plates.
Suicide is the most preventable kind of death. And that's why we really do advocate for young people and adults from every walk of life to actively seek out a training such as QPR, the Question, Persuade, Refer, which is, it's very, very basic. Mental health first aid. There's a curriculum that is specific to youth. So for people who are working with youth populations, and that kind of covers more general, what to look for if someone's, a young person is developing a mental health challenge, or if they're actively in a mental health challenge or even a mental health crisis, how to help in those situations and where to seek extra support, and how self-help can play a part in that. And then that goes all the way up to ASSIST, which stands for Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training. That is a very intensive 2-day long, we usually do it from 8 to 4 when we do our trainings, and it's 2 consecutive days. Very intense and very specific to how do I intervene during a suicidal crisis. Someone is literally in the middle, and we know with our youth that they are impulsive, right? Because of brain development and all of that, they're impulsive. And so the time that we have to act between the time that they mention suicide and the time that they act upon it can be very, very brief. And so it's really important that people know what to do, and people understand that talking about suicide with a young person or any person is not going to plant that idea in their head, that if it's on their mind, then they need to talk about it, and they need to have someone that is able and willing to talk openly and honestly to be able to get them the help that they need. And young people don't always have the language or the capacity to seek help on their own. And so we need to be that voice. We need to be the ones that notice. I notice this, and that concerns me. And so what can we do to help? And so that's what we really want to do. The numbers for suicide annually in the US, just under 50,000 people die every year from suicide. And so that's those are pretty scary statistics.
I was also going to say something about that, and I can't remember what that would be. But we'll look at this slide that gives us even a clear point of view. Oh, I know what I was going to say. In Malheur County, we're fortunate in Malheur County. We've done suicide, or we've done the ASSIST trainings. I believe every school in Malheur County now has 2 personnel that are ASSIST trained.
And some schools more than that.
Yeah, some schools more than that. And that class, we like to feel like the people that would take that ASSIST class would have a little bit of knowledge about mental health, substance use, and whoever they're working with. However, you can teach that at every level. We just had a class last week that were actually all from our agency, which is Lifeways. We work for Lifeways. And we had counselors down to peer support people. And I said, and I don't mean down to, because we said that accidentally, and one of our
Yeah.
peer support people goes, hey,
If you, yeah, if you look at it on a pay scale. from
yeah, pay
CEO
scale, yeah.
to peer support.
And we did do a training in LeGrand where we had a CEO at one of our assist trainings. So that is a really great asset to have, because how many assist trainers do we need when we have all of these numbers of people that are contemplating or dying by suicide? So suicide is the leading cause of death for ages 10 to 24 in Oregon, and it's the second leading in the United States. So I think that is very concerning, that there are a lot of reasons for that. Over here in Malheur County, you know, we feel pretty good about the services that we can offer in Malheur County, but we still can't serve everybody. You know, lack of services in the state of Oregon. There's just a whole lot of things that come into play. Access to firearms because of hunting. There's a lot of things that, you know, the poverty level, people just cultural differences. There's a lot of things that lead to that, but that's a terrible statistic. It's a terrible for Oregon to be known for that. In Oregon in 2021, now it takes about 16 months to get data. And so this data is from 2021, 450 young people between those ages lost their lives to suicide. And that actually says down there to 5. And yes, we have talked to people and listened, you know, learned on trainings that young people that age have killed themselves. So for every person that dies by suicide, there is a minimum of 15 people that are impacted. Now that changes based on what your location is, how involved you are in the community, in the school. If one person dies if one person dies by suicide in any one of the schools that you all work in, everybody in the school is impacted. So that quickly takes that number 15 to a lot more. If we just went by 15 with that 453 young people, that's 6,795 people that were severely impacted by that person's suicide death. And if we take that, did you take this by 5% here? 5 to 25%?
No, that was 40 to 100%. Because
Okay,
that's on behaviors
okay, so, and the
for the
same,
last one.
yeah, for in the same period of time, 634 to 906 young people between the ages of 5 and 24 showed suicide behaviors. That the numbers that we see, the actual suicide reported deaths, we have to stop and look at the rise in the data for overdose deaths in the United States and the state of Oregon, because some of those overdose deaths could be suicide deaths. There's also a lot of other reasons that people do not want suicide, you know, put on the death certificate. And in fact, I went to a training a few years back by a suicidologist, and he said, literally, you see the number of suicide deaths. So 48,000 or approximately 48,000 in the United States last year. And you can about double that for the actual number of suicides. So this is a huge thing. And that I think that we can do some prevention work and break down that stigma and break down that taboo and save lives.
So we told you that the number one risk factor for young people is trauma. Well, on the other end of that spectrum, the number one protective factor is feeling close to at least one caring adult. And we know, at least here in Malheur County, and I'm sure that it applies, you know, nationwide, there are those youth who don't have a safe, caring adult in their immediate family that they can rely on and turn to. And so for a lot of them, the 6 to 8 hours that they spend a day at school is the safest place that they are. And in that space, that safe space is where they're going to find that caring adult, that one person that can really make the difference between whether they're struggling and going down a wrong path or they're meeting their challenges and going down a healthy path. And so just really reminding ourselves, everyone that works with youth in whatever capacity you work with them, from, you know, newborn babies in childcare, all the way through college and beyond ages, is that they need that one caring adult. They need somebody in their corner to really have their back and to really say, I see you and I understand you, and I know that things happen to you and those things are not your fault. And helping them to move past that and to have a brighter future and a better future. And so anything that we can do to help our youth achieve that is really important. Early intervention really is the key to reducing the secondary risk factors that are associated with mental health conditions and disorders. And I always include, you know, suicide and substance abuse when we're talking about mental health disorders. Because as many as half of all children that have a diagnosis currently are not getting treatment for whatever it is that their diagnosis is. And that's literally just the kids that are diagnosed. Okay, so statistically speaking, that says nothing for the young people who are not and also not receiving any type of treatment. So the need is really, really great. And sometimes all it takes is that one caring adult that can really turn a young person's life around.
So we're going to quickly go over some signs and symptoms. I'm sure you've probably had training on the signs and symptoms, but I think what we're looking for are, this is where the relationships come into play. And so what kind of a relationship do I have with that student? If that student all of a sudden starts showing major changes, is doing things excessively, or has unrealistic expectations, if they're thinking, talking, writing, or drawing about ideas of death and or suicide, you need to trust your intuition and intervene and start asking some questions. And that's where the QPR really helps for that initial asking the questions. Any time we see a major change in a person, whether it's a youth or an adult or a family member or you know, somebody we work with or whatever, if we're seeing major changes, trust your gut on that one and start asking some questions. What we say in mental health first aid, and this is from a trainer that used to train with us a long time ago, if their ability to live, to love, or to laugh are being impacted, they're, you know, what's going on in their living world, what's going on in their relationships, what's going on in their activities, if that starts looking different, then it's kind of our obligation, ethical obligation, I guess would say, to start asking the questions. So anything that looks different, because if it's just like somebody's just having a tough time because they had a breakup or because you know, they've got an uncle that's sick or something, that person, that young person, especially that young person, but any person experiencing that, they may not be suicidal, but they have a need that needs to be addressed. And so we need to at least talk with them before that exacerbates into something worse. And so the problem comes here with our adolescents. It's hard to tell, because when we start, if we just posted the warning signs and stuff, a lot of it looks like typical adolescence. So again, distinguishing between what's typical for that adolescent and what might be going on. And again, individualized, trauma is individualized, and all of these things are just so individualized, which makes your jobs harder, because it's that relationship building that's so important. But in your jobs, we understand that that's what you do. So that's helpful.
So we've got some resources for you that we'd like to share, and feel free to snap a screenshot of this. We did test it and the QR code worked when we when we shot it from our screen, so hopefully it will. If not, I can always send these slides to Joyce and she can share with all of you. This is from Trauma Informed Oregon, and it is a new QR code that they have put out with information specific for youth who are maybe struggling themselves or who are helping a friend who's struggling, either with suicide or mental health challenges. And what do I do when my friend says this to me? And it kind of walks the young people through the steps of what they can do, who they can reach out to, where they can find that help and support. And I encourage you to reach out to Trauma Informed Oregon and order these QR codes for yourself. I don't believe there's a cost to order them. Is that correct?
I don't believe so, yeah.
And they are creating them in Spanish. We had people ask us for them in Spanish. And so we turned to Trauma Informed Oregon and said, hey, are these available in Spanish? And so they are working on creating those in Spanish. I don't know what the date of the Spanish release is yet, but that is coming. So Trauma Informed Oregon website is there. Code and explore the resources that they have to offer, because they have a lot more than just this. They have really wonderful resources.
And on that QR code, when Paula talks about ordering them, you can go in and you can request to order those. And they're small stickers. I don't have, they're small stickers that a young person could put on a water bottle, put on a notebook, put, you know, and they could scan that if somebody came to them and was struggling, if one of their, you know, one of their peers came to them, or if they start struggling. And I hope you can get to it, because it's really good information. It just kind of leads you through, what do I do? And so again, knowing that young people are going to talk to peers, most likely first, we've got to give them peers. We've got to educate our young people also. So the last slide is just the QPR. The QPR website is on there. Assist, which is Living Works, that'll tell you more about them. Some other places where we got information. Well, of course, there's Mental Health First Aid, NAMI, National Institute of Mental Health, and then the Oregon Health Authority. If you go in there, there's a lot of good information on data, especially. But
Yeah.
there's, and we have all kinds of other resources. We just try to keep it short and sweet.
So what questions do you have for us?
Oh, they're easy.
Great.
Oh, wonderful. I see in the chat that Joyce put the Trauma Informed Oregon there. That's wonderful. Thank you. And compassion fatigue is real. Yes, Libby, it really, really is. And honestly, that makes me think that we should have had a slide in here on self-care, because it is really, really important to take care of yourself. You cannot save a drowning victim if you are drowning yourself. So making sure that you make self-care a priority. And we know that in the helping fields, we're usually the first people to preach it and the last people to practice it, but it really is important. Even if that is 5 or 10 minutes a day, do something that is for yourself and that bolsters you and helps you revitalize. And make sure that you have someone to talk to, whether that is a friend, a counselor, a diary, whatever that looks like. A dog. Yeah, they don't talk back, so that's always wonderful. But yeah, having somebody for yourself that you can, or some form of self-care that you do. Mine's crochet. That's my thing lately. I probably have 5 or 7 projects going right now.
Thank you so much. I've noticed with our students, the students that I've worked with, probably 95% of all of my kids that are on 504 plans and IEP struggle with low self-esteem and struggle with their self-confidence. And so this is so crucial. And yeah, I just really appreciate this. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
And if you're in Malheur County, because I think it looks like you are, Mary Jane, we're always here to help and provide some trainings too. So we can't, sorry, I know we look like we're looking up because we are. The camera's straight across. So just get in touch with us anytime, because we have the funding to provide those trainings and such in Malheur County.
Are there other counties that have the same thing to help with that training in this around the state that would have the monies and to do that?
around the state, there absolutely are trainers. I know with mental health first aid, there's usually some type of scholarships that they are able to provide those for free in most places. It's my understanding that most places don't charge for mental health first aid, or if they do, it's very nominal. As far as assist, that depends on who's providing that training, because assist trainers, there are some national trainers that travel. And so they may live back east and they just travel around the country to provide those trainings. Those are the ones that are going to be a little more expensive. But if the organizations have funding to bring those trainings in, they should be able to be provided to people within an organization or within a school free of charge or to a very minimal. So
Yeah,
Melanie
Lane
says
County
Love
does a lot.
Inc. does suicide prevention training.
Lane
and
County has a lot of stuff.
Yes, Lane County has great stuff.
We get
so
all of their stuff. We
yes,
get a
if you-
lot of stuff.
we do,
Yeah.
yeah. And Lynn County as well. We see
Yeah.
good stuff coming from Lynn County.
Oh, Roger,
Oh,
yeah,
and Roger, we
Roger's
know
awesome.
Roger, he's awesome.
yeah, yes.
Yes, so there's a few things in the chat there that people are commenting on. Yeah, so there are things. Sometimes you've got to search for them. If you have a specific county in mind for a specific training, we can ask at our state meetings and find out who would be the contact person there. And all of those websites assist, actually, I'm not sure about QPR, but Assist in Mental Health First Aid have like trainer registries on their website so that you can look by region and see where local trainers are available.
I didn't have a question. I just wanted to thank you also from Southern Oregon ESD. We just talked about this topic at our meeting on Wednesday, the importance of it. We're all planning to go to a training and actually looked up curriculum that we would be ordering to kind of just get more knowledge of it. So I just wanted to thank you for the time because I feel it is a very important topic right now. So just thank you for your time today.
You're very
Yeah.
welcome.
We're pretty passionate about all of this. We're really passionate about mental health first aid. We're really passionate about suicide prevention. We're lucky in Malheur County, we have a great coalition that helps us out. We finally got to hire another person, so there's 3 of us now on this team, and but our coalition helps us out a lot. We try to put out as many trainings in Malheur County as we can, so. Joyce knows how to get hold of us. And so if you ever need to get hold of us, if you have any questions or need any names or anything, we can probably get those for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate that. Do you mind if I put your email in the chat?
No,
Oh,
go
no,
ahead.
that's fine. Yeah, that'd be just fine.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Anyone else have any questions?
Again, thank you for having us. It's so important that we're all working together as a community, a state. You know, all of us working together really is what's going to make a difference.
Absolutely.